October. So close to Halloween. Yes.
And we're on time for once.
And we're on time, mostly. 3 minutes late, according to my computer. Today we're going to be talking all about character creation, probably partially as it pertains to getting ready for NaNoWriMo, since I know that's what I'm trying to create characters for. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the discussion section off to this side, I think, unless it's mirror imaging me, but I don't think it is. And we will go through and we'll try to make sure that we get to all of the questions. If it looks like we've gone way past your question and just totally missed it, feel free to repost it. It's a little harder to keep track now that it's not in like the comment section. So we don't want to miss anyone. I'm going to start us off with the question, what is your favorite or most memorable character that you've read in the recent or near recent past? I'm going to start with Desiree.
Oh, okay. Well, if you've been watching our videos for a while, this should come as no surprise. But my favorite character is Kath from Fangirl. Shocking, I know.
What?
What? No way.
Erin, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with one that's pretty recent because like otherwise my replies are totally like stuff we've already talked about before, like Raven Boys and stuff. But the most recent one, well, I mean, it's an exemplary character, but like I haven't read it recently. So I'm gonna go with something super recent, which is The Serpent King by Jeff Zentner. Had some really cool characters. It's told from 3 point of views, from Travis, Dill, and Lydia, and just like their different backgrounds, and they're completely different people. And so that the characters were really memorable, particularly Dill, because it's told from mainly his point of view, and his dad is this like radical Baptist like snake handler. And he has this like really terrible, like his dad went to jail for like really nasty things. And so Dill has to like kind of live with his family name and like how this small town looks at him. And I just found him like a really fascinating character because he just had such a fascinating backstory and like things he was struggling with. So yeah, that's The Serpent King and Dill. It was awesome.
I have Kelly next.
I'm going to go with Aspen Quick from Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies by Lindsay Rabar. He was the main character of the story and very much an anti-hero. Like, the main family in the story has the ability to take things from people. I know I've talked about it on the channel before, but so they can like take a physical feature or the ability to see or the competitive streak. And so the main character just kind of does this without even without even realizing what he's doing. Like, he took the girl he had a crush on's love for her boyfriend. So in order to like, and he never even thought anything of it.
Interesting.
So he was just like,
Wow.
I mean, you didn't fully hate him all the way through because it was his point of view and it was really well done, but you knew he was a bad person.
Interesting.
Rachel.
I'm going to go with Kaz of Lee Bardugo's Crooked Kingdom, which is the second in her Six of Crows duology, because I love Kaz in the first one and I loved him even more in the second one. And he's just, if no one knows, he's like a crime boss kind of thing, but he always wears these special pair of gloves and he's very much in it for himself. And he just has, I don't know how he does it, but he just pulls off these incredible heists and you think he's doing one thing, but he's been doing another thing and you're like, oh no, I bet I know that he's actually doing that thing, but you're wrong, he's doing this whole other thing. And oh man, he's so cool and he's very closed off, but he has a really cool backstory too. So I'm like, it's okay, Kaz, let me love you. Also, will you steal me some stuff? Because like you're really good at it. And can I borrow your coat? Because you seem really fashionable.
Excellent. I'm going to go with Scheherazade in the Wrath of the Dawn series. I read the 2 books in the series this year, and I love her. She's not like typically I love the characters where everyone is awful, and she's not really awful. She's more of like a witty, says what she thinks, is willing to take like make big sacrifices for things. And she's just always so smart about all the things she does. And I love that. And I would love to be able to write more like smart characters like her. I love her.
Yeah, I forgot how much I liked her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's so smart. You're like, oh, thank God there's a smart character that's like, I'm not going to go running off and to do this because that's a bad idea.
Yeah. And like, I would always like expect a certain thing to happen in the book. Like, oh, well, in past books I've read, this happens and the main character jumps to an assumption and goes and does this thing that's maybe not the smartest. And Scheherazade is not like that. She thinks everything through. She doesn't make bad assumptions just because someone does something sketchy. Like, I love her. Gonna check the comments really quick.
I have one more thing to add because I totally forgot about him until now. The artificial intelligence from the Scorpion rules.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
he's like, can you even call him a character? But you have to because he is such a character. He's so snarky and witty, and I just bought the Swan Riders, and he's like really heavily featured in it, so I'm really excited to read it. Yeah.
Okay. What's his name again? I can't remember.
Tassos.
Oh, Tassos.
Oh,
dang it! What's his name?
Let's see. His name is
Talus. It's Talus.
Talus.
Yeah.
Swan Riders. Talus. Tassos. Close enough.
Close.
Yeah. He's just like
forgot how
super
sassy he
snarky.
was.
He's so sassy. This artificial intelligence that's like, I will blow all of you up if you don't get along. And I'm like, I love you, even though you're evil. Anyways.
It reminded me too of the artificial intelligence in Illuminae.
Ooh, which we'll be discussing next week.
Next week, we're talking about Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and it's gonna be good.
Look what I just bought.
I just saw that on the shelf the other day.
I'm not letting myself read it until after the Illuminate chat, just so I keep everything like.
Yeah,
and it's
I'm
different
gonna
characters.
not, but I'm like, so very exciting.
We have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, also from Illuminate, I really loved the main character, Katie. I really liked her. She was very smart, very resourceful, and I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah. We had a question from Drew asking, how do you fill in a character storyline? Like, you know their end arc, but you're not sure how to get them to that point of character development.
Keep doing terrible things to them.
Well, I'd say if you know what the end is, well, you have to make them the exact opposite of what the end is, and then try and figure out what the change factor was, like what made them change. So if they're a nice person at the end, well, they used to be a horrible person, so why are they nice? Like, what made them want to be nice?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
it's usually
just,
great.
like, kill a bunch of people or something like that.
That too. It's usually great to throw things at them, like pick one thing they're terrified of or that they're really bad at, and like throw that at them. And then like what happens and how they grow and change from like fighting through and succeeding against, it's hard to say when I don't know if it's like bad guys or if it's like he's trying to get an A in math and he's terrible at math. But you know what I mean? Like, how does he or she grow and change through confronting what they fear or are terrible at?
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of like in video games, how you have like all kind of like the mini bosses and you're fighting them, and then at the very end you get to like the boss battle, and that's like the ultimate thing, like the scariest thing for them to face, and like the last step basically in their character arc. Kind of relating this, I've been dealing with this a lot in my book that I've been revising, because I have a character who's not so great, and she's terrified of getting close to people because she lost everyone who she cares about. And So at the different plot points throughout the book, I found different ways to make her like, well, at this part, she's going to get betrayed by someone who she trusted. And then at this next one, she's going to be forced to admit that she needs someone else. And then like the big boss, which it isn't a spoiler anymore. It used to be a spoiler, but now you find out this person's alive in chapter 2. So like the very end, the big boss battle is like, she's faced with like her brother basically and has to kind of like relearn to accept people. And I'm losing my train of thought as I'm talking about it because I'm getting like frazzled, emotional about my characters. But
You're just so good.
my characters are not
So
good.
great.
No, but finding different things like that to kind of like ramp up the tension, like, oh, well, your character has to make a friend to work through this thing. The character gets betrayed by that friend, and now they have to trust again and again and again. And then finally you give them something that it's like the ultimate thing that they're most afraid of getting or afraid of losing, and make them decide whether to fight or leave it. And I think that's the best way to get your character like through the arc. Did that make any sense at all? Okay.
It's always good to like, it's always good to read a lot and like pay attention to character arcs, particularly making note of the characters that start out one way and end up very, very different. And like going through and even make notes for yourself in the books you really like. Oh, the character is changing here. This is a pivotal point where she has to make a decision here. Almost like mapping out the book as you read can be super helpful for your own character arcs.
Mm-hmm. We also have a question from Sabra. What if your characters are dicks and you feel you have no control over them?
Then welcome to writing. That's really all I've got to say.
You wrangle
Let them
those
take
guys
you
in.
wherever they want to go, and then revise the crap out of them later. We have another question from Laura Ann. How do you create well-rounded secondary characters?
This is something I'll say something about because I thought my secondary character was very awesome, and she was one of my favorites, and then I had a literary agent that I sent to at the time tell me that she was flat and terrible and her least favorite character, which was really crushing. But then I had to go back and read, and I realized she was very flat. To me, in my head, she was very exciting and three-dimensional, but on the paper, she wasn't. So basically what I went and fleshed out and wrote down everything that I could think about her backstory on the page, on an actual piece of paper, like getting it all out of my head, because it didn't translate from my head onto the page, I think. So I gave her like really strong likes and dislikes, and I think the huge thing that I had to give her was her own motivation, which was completely separate from the main character's motivation. And it kind of happened to, and sometimes it would make the two characters butt heads, and sometimes it would make them agreeable and want to go do the same thing, which worked to show both of their characters really well, I found. So if a lot of the time, if you find your characters flat, it could be that they're lacking their own motivation separate from the story.
Definitely. And I think that can go the opposite way too. Like with your main characters, I know when I first got started writing, all of my secondary characters were the ones with all of the push, kind of just like pushing around the main character all the time. So when you guys start writing characters, do you start with anything in particular? Or do you kind of go as they come to you? Or do you like have to know their name before you start? Or
I have to know their name. I don't know how. Do you just write Jane otherwise? I don't know how other people do it.
I remember writing one, and I think I wrote like 2 or 3 chapters, and I didn't have names for anybody, so I just called them like she and him and her, and I would just capitalize it. And I can't do it anymore. I have to know their name. But usually this is gonna sound so bad. I'm like, usually they just come to me, whether it's an idea or like the person themselves, or usually I just kind of have like a piece of artwork or a picture in my head, of them doing something, and then I'm like, oh, okay, like this is their character. Like the character that I'm working on now, she just came to me when she's in full battle armor with a sword, like on the battlefield kind of thing. And I was like, oh, that's my character.
It's so funny because I was gonna say the same thing, and I always sound like, because Rachel, even you were like, because I always feel like I sound really pretentious saying stuff like that, but it really does just come to you.
Like it's kind of like appear. Like,
yeah. Well, sometimes they literally show up in my head fully formed. And I'm like, oh hi. I mean, not like personality wise as much as like looks.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like for my last book, I knew exactly what she looked like, and actually in this one, I don't. Her personality is much more fleshed out. I still don't 100% know what this current one looks like. So it's always kind of different, I think, which is weird.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever super know what my characters look like. Like their faces are always kind of fuzzy to me. I don't know. Like, well, he has green eyes for sure, because I've said that. And a straight nose, some sort of hair on the lighter spectrum.
well, that's why I never understood those things, especially on Wattpad when they used to have them, the sidebars of the cast that people would want. And I'm like, how do you know? And then I'd be reading the story and they'd be like, oh, I imagined this person to play this person. And I'm like, really? Like, I don't see that at all. And it was just too jarring for me. I was like, how do you do that? And you're like, oh, that celebrity to play that person. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
I actually will do that sometimes if I'm struggling to get a firm grasp of what they look like in my head. I'll go and I'll just like flip through, like and sometimes you get really creepy results if you look this up in Google, so you have to be careful. But like if I look up like blonde, blue-eyed teenager, and then it will come up with like a bunch of pictures, and I'll be like, oh, she might kind of look like this one. But like I said, you have to be real careful what you type in for that, because like you want the police.
Gotta put a bunch of filters on that.
Yeah, I'm always careful. Or I'll be like blonde, blue-eyed character, right? Like, then it will be less creepy.
Yeah, Pinterest is great.
You always
for
have
that.
Pinterest.
Yeah, I use
True.
Pinterest.
I know. I used to usually type in character or female character or female fantasy character or whatever, and then go to the boards and then just like creep through all of them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
There's a character database that you could type in like what features you want, and it pulls up people that have those features. And I'm gonna try to find it.
Ooh,
That's cool.
Yeah, let me know if you find that. That's awesome.
It's the thing, I used it, and it's very, very helpful.
Ooh.
But let me try to find it.
Yeah, that would be super handy. Because sometimes I have like a vague idea, but I can't exactly find someone that has all of the things I'm thinking of. She just has an eye patch and short black hair and like a hook for hands.
one purple eye, just one.
Just one.
The other one's silver.
Why can't I find pictures like this?
Well, I find a lot of the time I'll find pictures, not necessarily of people, but maybe of like parts of people or like a hand or like a silhouette in the fog kind of thing, just of someone, and then that really I can base a character off of that. Because I know especially on Pinterest there's a lot of those collages where there's like usually like 6 pictures, and then it'll have like words on some of the squares, and then it'll have like a nature scene or like half of someone's face or something like that in one picture. And I find those kind of like moods, like a character mood board almost, I find I can work characters off of that much better than if I'm just like looking at pictures of people.
So, but don't look up disembodied hand. Or
no. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I love too sometimes like looking at pictures of people just to find like facial expressions or something like, oh, that is so my character. That is totally like the way they look or the way they make this kind of face, even if it's not necessarily exactly them. A lot of times I'll see like facial expressions or the way they're bending over an art table or something. It just like super reminds me of the character, and those are my favorite.
One of the things. Sorry, one of the things. Oh, okay. I was just gonna say one of the things I do to help me like kind of flesh out my characters is like if I know kind of what they look like, I'll look at a celebrity's like picture, but I'll use like a guide for the personality from like someone I know, because I like making my characters relatable. So if I add a piece of personality from me and say like my roommate and my professor, like that creates a different personality from any of us, but it also makes it super like relatable. So that's just something to think about if you guys needed help with that.
Thank you. No, I'll take that to heart.
I actually find, I know I've said this before probably a few times, that I have to write a full entire manuscript from beginning to end before I fully know who my character is. Like personality wise more than looks. Because I often will start off thinking they're one way and then end up at the end thinking they're completely different, which is why I think I keep my plotting a little more casual and loose, just so that I can do something else at the end or near the middle if I need to, because the character has changed so much. So I don't know, there's something to be said for kind of watching your character unfold a little bit as you write, although I'm sure it's different for some people.
I definitely had that before, where I think that they're going to be going one direction, and then halfway through, I'm like, maybe it would be interesting if they did this, and then all of a sudden it's completely gone, and there's someone completely different, which sometimes works.
Yeah, or you realize halfway through that you're like, this person would never actually do what I'm trying to make.
Yeah, right.
Get in this box.
Yeah, and I'm like, but they wouldn't actually do that. Dang it! So then I have to rewrite something. But I'm like, but I want them to do this.
Yeah.
I found the database.
What is it called?
It's called rphelper.tumblr.com/SC directory.
RP. Is it a role play thing?
SC directory?
Yeah.
So RP helper.
SC.
Oh, it's not.
Bless.
Did you find it?
Okay.
Oh my god.
In the discussion section.
Awesome. I didn't know how to do that. Otherwise I would have done that.
I just put it in the little discussion bar if you're watching along.
Oh my gosh, this is
awesome.
amazing. Thank
It's
you.
very, very helpful.
Definitely gonna be using
Holy
that.
crap. We had a question from, where'd it go? Yuri. My mind goes blank when creating characters, and then what I do come up with, I think, is flat and boring. Suggestions?
Anyone? She said her mind goes blank when creating characters?
And then when they do come up with a character, it feels flat and boring.
I would actually go against some of my previous advice and actually, if you're really struggling with it, try to create somebody that you kind of already know, or at least pieces of their personality. So you're actually writing about a semi-real person. So like watch for mannerisms, how they talk, how they hold themselves, how they react to things. And put all those in there. And then you can change them, edit them, and change them later. So obviously the person isn't like, hey, why are you writing about me?
There are a lot of character generators online as well if you need original ideas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, you go first.
Okay. I was just gonna say sometimes what I do is I watch people, which sounds real creepy, but it's not.
It's okay, you're a writer, everyone understands.
If you're like in the library or you're like in a park or something, watch people and create a story about that person that you see, and I'm pretty sure you'll figure out something that you like to add to a character in a story. And also it's really fun.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yes, people watching.
And if all of those things fail, which they are amazing and they shouldn't fail, but if they do, just start writing. You don't have to know your character super, super perfectly or have this amazing character when you start writing a first draft. If you throw them into situations, you can learn as you go, just like your character is like learning as they go through the plot. So when all else fails, just don't let it stop you from writing. Just see what happens.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I said before, like sometimes you might be somebody that does have to write an entire draft before you figure out who the character is. I mean, like if I stopped every time I couldn't figure out who the character was, I would never finish anything. And you might just have to go back and edit the manuscript afterwards. And you don't need to do it alone either. You can send it to beta readers and friends. They could make suggestions for what would make your character more fully fleshed and rounded character, right? So don't be scared. Just do it.
You got this. We had another question from Danny asking, what do you do when you're writing a character with a different ethnicity from yourself? I want to write a Dominican main character, but I'm afraid I'll portray them wrong and make people mad.
I know the answer to this one. I'm actually writing a character that's a different race than me right now. So if you have a friend that's that race, that becomes really helpful. And what I do, like when you look at like things about a different race, look at really like small things. Like my main character is going to be from Mexico, and I have no idea what it's like, you know, growing up in a Mexican heritage, but I have a friend that does. And so I ask her, like, what do you do like when you get sick? Because I know that varies a lot from culture to culture. What do you do like with your hair? Because I know me as an African American is drastically different from like, say, what Rachel does to her hair. So like little things like that, like what do you do like day to day? Like what little things vary day to day that you might not think about, and it gives your characters more depth.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't
That's
it
very
also
true.
absolutewrite.com that you can ask anything and receive answers if you're needing to write a fight scene or need to know the effects of some kind of drug or character development or whatever, you can go on there.
I do think too, it's like particularly in the YA world, and if you're looking to be published, you have to make sure you do a whole lot of research. And like Desiree said, talk to somebody who is actually grew up in that culture. And there's also these great things now called sensitivity readers. You can actually hire someone and send it to them, and they will go through your whole manuscript and tell you, hey, this is an issue, or you need to get rid of this, or can you put in this? I'd like to see more of this. So like, yeah, I mean, just do your research. And then if you do as much research as possible, then you shouldn't have to worry about offending people.
Yeah. You can find a list of sensitivity readers on writeinthemargins.org if you aren't sure where to start with that.
See, I took the much faster route when I wrote a main character that wasn't my culture. I had a Middle Eastern main character, and I put her in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. Everyone's culture in the zombie apocalypse is survive the zombie apocalypse.
Although, Kelly, I read your book, and she did have somebody that, didn't she come across somebody who was racist, or she came across somebody who was looking at her funny? I remember
Honestly,
that.
I don't even, I don't.
Oh, I remember that because I thought, yeah,
It's been a while.
because like if you do throw them, you did. I think you did a good idea. Good, you did a good job of it, because I remember it. Because you still have to remember that no matter if you do throw them in the middle of this zombie apocalypse, they're still shaped by whatever their background is. And like a white person in the middle of a zombie apocalypse is still never probably ever experienced racism or somebody being awful to them because of the color of their skin, right? So I mean, yeah, you can't ever separate someone completely from their background. But yeah, it does become less complicated if they're running from zombies.
It does.
We had a question from Autumn. Oh, were you gonna add something?
Yeah, just something real quick. If anyone is ever writing an African American character and you need help, just tweet me. I'll answer you. You can ask me anything. I don't really care. So there you go.
Excellent. We had a question from Autumn asking, do you have to use character profiles when you're creating characters?
I don't think you have to.
You don't have to do anything.
Do you guys personally use them?
No. I've tried before because I'm like, this is the professional thing to do, and then I always just end up changing my mind about something, or like I'll make like spreadsheets and then I'm just like, where was the category on this something again, or I'm like, whatever. So I just kind of jot down notes and then just make it up as I go.
It's something I want to be better on because I don't feel like I log enough of the information about my character as I'm writing them to reference later. But when you're in the moment of writing it, it's hard to remember to go back and like, yes, this is a thing that is official about my character now. So it's something I need to improve on.
Kyra has gotten me in the habit of figuring out the character's Hogwarts house and their love language. And I found that she's right. Like, if you know those two things, you can pretty well gauge like everything they're gonna do. So that's what I've been doing lately.
Interesting. Perhaps I shall try that.
That's really interesting.
I actually really like doing the Myers-Briggs personality test for them and seeing.
Oh, I do like that. Yeah.
I like it. I'm not
one they
usually
are.
dedicated enough to do it for all my characters. 'Cause it's
Yeah,
pretty involved.
I did it for not this book, for the last book I did it for, and I think it worked quite well. But yeah, I've been too lazy to do it for this book, and I should.
Thank you so much for all your questions, guys. If you're just jumping in, feel free to ask any character creation related questions in the discussion, and we will try to get to them all. Die Facing Our Foes asked, do you guys outline your characters or your plot first? After I have the basic idea for my story, I usually figure out my characters based on that, then plot based on personality actions.
That
I
way sounds
usually-
pretty good.
Yeah, I usually have some elements of the plot figured out before the character. Yeah, same.
Usually for me, like some of it kind of comes into play together. Like one of my major points is when her personality changes because of this event. So I'm thinking like that's kind of like they do go hand in hand, but then also there's the thing at the end of the book that just happens and you're like, oh dear God. So it has nothing to do with her personality at all.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to jump in and agree with Rachel on this one because a lot of my ideas for plots come kind of hand in hand with the character. Like the last one I was talking about, where I did the Myers-Briggs personality test and stuff. The character came to me as a young artist. And the plot was that she paints these pictures and they come to life. So like that kind of goes hand in hand, and the character came with the plot, although I had to flesh her out when I'd finish writing out the plot and stuff. But yeah, one kind of comes with the other, so sometimes.
Yeah, there are definitely times where I'm like, I have this great idea for a plot line and I have no idea who I want to put in it.
That happens to me all the time.
Yes. I find
Or
that
like,
the
I have this
most
amazing
challenging-
character and I don't know what they're going to do. They're just going to like
That
hang
never
around
happens
for
to
a
me.
while, watch it.
Yeah, not my problem.
Doesn't happen to me either. And I find it really challenging when I have this awesome plot and no character, because I almost feel like I'm shoehorning the character in, you know.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
awkward.
They're not quite
just
as
throw one
developed.
in and just
Yeah.
does it work?
Throw this guy in, see how he does. Yeah.
We have another question from Jody. In new adult, do the characters have to have sex, or can a new adult romance be written with fade to black or just a little kissing?
Yeah, sure. It's your book.
Yeah, they can do anything. They don't
It's a
have to have sex.
complicated question in terms of the genre. Like, you can absolutely write new adult characters and all of that, and I hope one day that a new adult as a genre will be more of everything. But right now, new adult is mostly the romance genre. Like, they're calling it new adult, but it's basically college-age people having sex stories.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Exactly.
it is.
Actually,
that's
I agree with. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree with Kelly on this one. Because it really depends, like, if you're self-publishing it, you can literally do whatever you want. Or if you're going with small press, you probably have more leeway. If you're wanting to eventually publish it, I mean, with the market the way it is now, you probably will need to have, like, some sexy scenes, even if you don't have, like, full-blown 50 Shades of Grey going on, right?
or you
I'm
can
not
skip the sexy
super
scenes, but
knowledgeable.
just know that it's not going to be marketed as new adult, even if the characters are that age.
An example of this is
Yeah.
Fangirl.
I was
where
going to
she
say
has
that.
fade to black, and it's marketed more
Very,
towards young
well, and
adults.
very marketed as YA, yeah.
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 Yeah, and you'll even
So
see
good.
adult romance that has, like, it's cleaner, it's fade to black, but new adult is a very specific thing right now, and I hope it will evolve more. But
Yeah.
just be
well,
aware.
I think the whole idea about new adult having a lot of sex in it is because that is the age where people are kind of starting to do that a lot, which is why they put it in there, because it's new and exciting and people that are reading it are going to be having sex. So they're like, hey, let's put something in that regular people are doing, because now it's mostly like college stuff and sex and like finding a job or finding a place, which is the exact same as YA when they're having problems in high school and getting their first kisses.
Yeah.
That's very,
well,
very
and
accurate.
with new adults as well, you're like becoming more serious in a relationship some of the time, right? Like you're just starting to think about like, do I eventually want to get married? I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that that's going to be in the back of the mind of the character all the time, depending on the character, but like it's starting to get a little more serious. Not first kisses and hand holding as much.
Although,
And the main
maybe
character.
in real life, in literature, it feels more like in YA. It's all like, this is the person I'm going to marry, this first person I've kissed.
Right.
Whereas in new adult, it's all like, oh, let's go have sex with a few people and see what this is about.
That's true too.
Well, I mean, you're not too off. So.
It's funny
Next
though,
question.
because there's a lot.
Next
There's
question.
a lot of sex in YA too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it cuts off at YA and then you start all the sexy times in new adult. There's lots of sex in YA, although it might be more fade to black sometimes.
Yeah. New question. We've got a question from Helen. Do you ever find yourselves writing similar characters across different projects? Like you always write a shy main character or always write a sassy character? And how do you avoid doing so?
I read that question and thought of Kyra. All of the characters are super snarky.
Yeah.
I mean, I
all my
try, but
yeah. All my characters tend to really like reading or writing, which I gotta pull back on a little bit probably. Not everyone does, unfortunately.
Like, all of my characters have, like, inadvertently have an element of my personality. It's not always the same element. Like, I have a character that's, like, super anxious, element of my personality, but I also have a character that likes to collect Pokemon cards. Another aspect of my personality. So there's that, but for me, I don't think I'm like, oh, every single character I write is shy, or oh, every single character I write is extremely funny, like me, because I am.
okay.
I think just being aware of it's a big part of it. Know who your characters are, be honest with yourself, and realize if it's an issue.
Yeah, because I mean, like in the case of Kyra, who always writes very witty and snarky and smart characters, it's totally fine as long as the characters themselves are still slightly different from one another, and it's not literally just like transposing your characters into different.
But honestly, even then, if you aren't published yet, does it really matter? If you keep writing this character you're very comfortable with and she makes sense in all of your stories, and no one's ever going to read these other stories she existed in first, I don't know if I would see a problem with it.
Sometimes, especially if it's from first person, like kind of almost stream of consciousness, I don't know if it even matters if it's published, because I know when I read Kyra's stories, I'm like, yes, I'm ready for a snarky, smart-ass character, and I'm excited, right? I like that character, and that's kind of, I think if she was a published author, why I would be buying all her books, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily always a bad thing.
Yeah, there's definitely authors that are known for having a specific type of story or a specific type of character. And if writing a specific kind of character is what you're good at,
Yeah,
own it.
exactly. You're always going to be in a different situation, right? So it's not the same.
Yeah, it's true. I was gonna say, if your main character is always really snarky, you don't necessarily have to make it the main character that's snarky. You can make the best friend that's really snarky, so you can still have it in there, even if it's not the main character.
And let's face it, in YA, 80% of people are at least a little bit snarky.
There's so much sass going on in YA.
So much. It's the best.
I've gotten some of my best lines from that. Like, I can't even be mad.
I wish people were this witty in real life.
Right?
For real.
Books are great.
People think I'm funny. I'm just tricking people into thinking I'm funny.
Let's see. We had another question. I'm losing track of all the questions in the discussion section. Wade asked, have any of you guys tried the tarot card approach to figuring out characters, motives, goals, conflicts? Have any of you guys heard of that? I haven't.
No.
So
I have.
No, but I'm
No.
intrigued because it makes
Yes.
me
Tell us
Raven
more.
voice.
please tell us more. We are interested.
I've always been fascinated with tarot cards, but I just can't read them.
Don't know what the last one was.
We've got a question from Let's Talk About Books, baby. What if your character is actually a boring or flat person? Is that ever okay?
Bella?
Fired.
I think a supporting character can be boring or flat, particularly if that's their personality and it's kind of like a running joke or something. Like, those are fine, and it's quite funny actually sometimes. But I don't think I necessarily want to read from the point of view of a boring, flat character. Well, not flat. Flat is never okay because that means unrealistic. But like, boring people do exist. So
But they probably don't think they're boring.
probably
So
not.
remember to give them more layers than on the surface people might see. Because there may be a lot of people out there who think we're all very boring because we're fascinated with books. And they're like, that is the dullest thing I've ever heard.
We are super exciting people.
We're the most interesting people, Kelly.
Okay, you're amazing. I don't know what people think we're boring. We're great.
I'm going to go with sports people.
People are boring, though.
And I'm over
Exactly.
here like, I say, what a rapturing game of ball. Who will be rooting for again? What starting young man and what color?
Score the points.
Go team. Do the thing.
Yeah,
Yay.
no.
I don't need to see people hitting things with sticks. Books are better.
I like them both.
Yeah.
Boring.
Well,
Matter of perspective.
Yeah. Well, I'll say again that when you say the main character is boring or flat, just because a main character is not super snarky and witty and has comebacks for every single thing doesn't mean that they're boring. Like, I think there's a bit of a difference between, like, I say witty things every 3 pages and I hate everything and just go through life without making conflict. Like, there is a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So consider
think-
how boring your character is.
Yeah. And I think particularly if it's being told from like a third person, maybe even like third person omniscient, so it's like slightly detached rather than first person where you're like right in their headspace all the time, I think you can get away with it even more as long as your character is evolving from boring and flat into something else. Have a friend who has also done this very, very well, so. Oh, just to clarify, someone answered that question. Way to go, guys. Never mind. It was a clarification about love languages, but you guys are on top of it. How do you make sure your main character has flaws? I always feel like my main character lacks flaws and is boring because they are too perfect. The classic Mary Sue conundrum.
What's something you're bad at?
Everything.
Everything but writing.
You're a
Thanks for
beautiful
bringing that up.
You're perfect to me.
That's actually a good question, though, to ask yourself if you find your character doesn't have any flaws, because everyone does have flaws.
Mhm.
So asking yourself what you're terrible at or what you're afraid at or afraid of. Sorry, speaking is one of the things I'm terrible at.
Hard.
Or really looking at anyone you know very well, because it's probably easier to look at other people's flaws honestly and objectively than your own. But look at a variety of people you know, and you'll see that they have a variety of flaws. It's so hard to come up with a list of flaws off the top of your head and just pick something for your character.
Yeah. Well, and it can be like a surface flaw. Like, I leave stuff everywhere. Like, I can count on like absolutely being at a friend's house and they'll phone me later and be like, you left your book here, you left your socks here. Like, that is literally my thing. All my friends are like, oh, Erin left this here again. So like, that's a tiny little flaw and it's not a big deal. I also have a friend who is like massively passive aggressive. That's her thing. If she's mad at you, she's so passive aggressive, and I love her to bits, but that's her major like flaw, I guess, right? And she's like, as she gets older, she gets better at it. But like everyone has one. So pick a couple and put them in the character,
Yeah. I think when you're first coming up with a character, it's very easy to be infatuated with them because it's like, I made this. Look at this beautiful human who is so good at all the things. I came up with it.
It's basically being a parent without the actual child.
Yeah.
That's like so much better in my opinion.
And so you have to dig down and get to know them better, because you can still, like, as you get to know someone better and you fall in love with them, you become acutely aware of their flaws. But you can still love them and you can still write them in these great situations. But you just really have to dig deep into what they're most afraid of and what they're willing to do anything to have or to protect.
Well, I feel like, Megan, you were the one that said this, that like whatever your main plot arc is, what flaw is going to make this the most difficult for your character? Like, what do they need to achieve? And then how can you further cripple them and make this harder?
Right. Which is always great, because like if I was writing my friend into the story with her passive aggressiveness, one of the plot arcs would be that she would have to confront someone, which is just like scares the crap out of her. I know that because we've had long conversations about this, right? So that would be a defining thing as she was growing and changing as a character. So.
Oh, now I'm really running through all these scenarios in my head. So I guess there's probably a line you want to go here of like, it needs to make sense within the story, but there's a lot of fun you can have with this.
So much. Well, and like confronting someone wouldn't necessarily be the like epic conclusion of her plot arc. It would be something like a little
it's the character arc. It's not the plot arc.
Growing the character.
Yeah. You can have more than one,
but still a part of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, like you can make them messy, but you can also make it so that they have an anger problem or something, so they have to get over that as a larger character arc. But then like little conflicts are they leave stuff everywhere, or they never put their clothes away, or then they're running around last minute being like, oh my god, where is that thing? And then that makes them late for something, and then you have conflict there.
Right.
And a lot of times those things can be like symptoms of the bigger problem, like everything is messy, which triggers the anger.
I can't remember which book this was, but I remember reading it a long time ago, but the character had massive like anger problems, but it was getting in the way of like controlling his like the magical powers he was like slowly developing. So every time he lost his temper, his powers would just like, and maybe this is probably like a bunch of different books, but his powers would just like erupt and cause huge amounts of trouble, right? So that was something he had to like best in himself in order to best the bad guy in the climax, right? I think that's probably like 50 books I've just discussed, but yeah.
I was gonna think, like, which one is that?
It's just like a lot, I think. All of them. More questions.
Danny asked, when's the next write-in? We are going to be doing write-ins every Sunday of November.
Yes.
It's going to be awesome. So
get those words in.
Oh, yeah.
We have another question. Well, actually, we had a really great comment related to characters who are too perfect seeming. Ellie mentioned maybe a character's flaw could be that they're too perfect and that makes them a bit egotistical, like Selena from Throne of Glass. And I love Selena. She's perfect.
Yes. She's a big influence in the character that I'm writing right now.
Yes,
She's so
highly
sassy.
recommend. So sassy.
She's
The,
just so good.
the falling from her high horse plotline.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love that Selena, she's so many things. We had a question a while back about like if it's okay to write stereotypes into your characters because some people, the stereotypes come from somewhere. And I think Selena is such a good example of a character who meets some stereotypes. Like she's a beautiful girl who loves beautiful clothes and loves desserts and stuff, but she is more than just the stereotype. She could also like kill you with her thumb.
Right.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's originally what I really liked about her was that she's the stereotypical assassin, like flipping that whole thing around. She is the beautiful assassin, but then she also really likes fancy clothing and she likes sweets, and it's just like it's so opposite of what you think. And that's why I really fell in love with her at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because in YA fantasy, the assassin that could kill you with a thumb is like actually becoming a very common stereotype. So it is cool to flip that around and have her be like, but I love dresses, and just like
that's
turning her mouth purple with candy or whatever.
right, yeah. And, like loving dogs and like having then getting the dog and be like, oh my god, it's a puppy, like you're like freaking out. You're like, oh, you're adorable.
We've got a question. Where did it go? Weird Girl asked, how do you guys shape a character's personality? Do you write all their traits, negative and positive, or do you just have a vague idea of your character's personality and go with that? So it's kind of like, are you a plotter or a pantser of personality types?
Well, personality's so hard though, because like even just writing down traits doesn't feel like it's enough to shape a personality. In some aspect, you always just know it.
Yeah, I can't ever sit down and be like, this person is this and this and this and this, and like so it's more just like I have a vague sense and then I'll write around that and then kind of figure it out later. Sometimes I'll be surprised, sometimes I'll be writing and then be like, huh, you know what? I think she does feel that way about that thing. All right, let's write that in and then go from there.
Well, I mean, like personality in general, like you don't know what someone's personality is until they're in a situation where it comes out. So it's very hard to write characters' personality traits and then be like, oh, okay, this is their personality. It's more like, oh, I think they're kind of snarky and kind of nerdy or something like that. And you put them in situations and their personality just kind of comes out.
Yeah, earlier in the comments, people were talking about The Sims for like making characters, which I love. But in The Sims, like you're picking character traits like that where, okay, this one has a green thumb and hates the dark and loves dogs. In The Sims, it's super simple. Like if they see a dog, they're gonna do the dog loving thing. And if they are in the dark, they're gonna, but in real life, it comes together differently. So you just need to give the personality some room to be instead of just specifically defining it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with writing down a list of character traits if that's how you operate. But like we said earlier, just kind of keep in if the character, maybe does something else in the situation, because sometimes characters do sort of do their own thing, then maybe, you're slowly fleshing out the character's personality through the story, so in a different way. Doggy!
Dog.
Puppy!
Doge.
Be my
Just
friend.
Doge.
Be my friends. Don't leave me.
Oh.
He got a bath. He's really mad.
That's what I'm doing after this. Bathing the dog.
It's an exciting life we live. Let me check the questions. This is kind of a Nano-related question, but Courtney asked, in preparation for Nano, have you guys had to move things around so that you'll have time to write, or do you just try to write around your normal schedule?
I have
I mean-
actually never done a full nano before, but this time I'm pretty busy, so I'm going to try and write in between. I'll see if I can get up maybe a couple hours earlier, or stay up later and fit some stuff in. Then I think I'm going to make Sunday my writing day, so you guys can help help motivate me.
The WordNerds will facilitate that.
Yes.
I was originally. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Keep cutting Desiree off.
Desiree, were you saying something?
No, not this time.
Yeah, I didn't see Desiree move.
You go, because you've been so quiet this chat.
Wait, me?
I don't think
Yeah,
she
what
had
do you
anything to say this time.
Oh, sorry.
I was like, wait, like,
Quiet. Oh, no, I was just going to say that I've been planning on doing revisions, but I don't think that most of the people reading are going to get it back by November 1st. So I'm going to have to do something whole new. I'm kind of excited. But I'm also doing other revisions. So I'm going to need to move my schedule around, like the question asked. So yes, I'll probably be doing my revisions in the morning and then forcing myself to actually write in the evening. So that's different. I usually just stick to the morning.
I'm trying to plan ahead to make time. One of the things, like this week, I'm going to try to film a few of my WordNerd videos. So that's one less thing I have to do in November. And just kind of like, we got an invitation to a party that I probably didn't want to go to anyway, but I'm going to send Matt and I'm going to stay home and write. That like
Nice.
1 month a year, I'm trying to make time for writing. So I'm saying no to a few more things and trying to plan ahead to give myself that time.
Yeah, my schoolwork does not like that.
Yeah, school doesn't listen to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
care that it's NaNoWriMo. It just doesn't. School's
It
like,
doesn't.
oh, it's November. Well, time for 3 papers, 7 tests, 11 quizzes.
And American Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And my birthday's in November too.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
So I
And a partridge in a pear tree.
it's like Nano is like
Thank you
at the
for laughing
most-
at that joke.
Nano is at the most inconvenient time for me because November, like the semester, like the school I go to, our semester is over the first week in December. So November is when all of our professors are like, oh, semester's almost over, here's 7 papers. And then my birthday middle of November, and then there's Thanksgiving, which my grandmother's getting married this year. So I have to go to that wedding. And November, Nano is just not at a good time this year. Can we change it to December?
You just push it to December. Just do it yourself in December.
That's true.
Yeah, December. Rimo.
NaNoWriMo. Dino
Would it be Deco-Rimo?
Deco? Maybe Deco? I don't know.
NaNoWriMo, I like that. All right.
Let's do
November isn't in NaNoWriMo, guys.
it. Whatever. I like Deco.
Oh my god, I just realized that. Okay.
I it wasn't, but I was just playing along with them, right? I totally
Yeah,
get
I
that.
totally did. I knew. Oh dear god. Okay, hold on. Yeah, NetDeco-Rimo does not sound as good.
I still like Deco-Rimo. Curse all of you. What's happening, okay?
Don't they kind of call it like unofficial NaNoWriMo, like National Novel Revision Month?
Yeah.
I've heard
There
it.
are sub-communities for every month now. You can find something.
I don't know how, like, I was already kind of nervous about trying to do revisions for Nano because I didn't know how. Like, how do you try to get your word count in with revisions? I don't know.
Just cry.
So I'm kind of glad they're not ready on time. My beta readers aren't ready. So then I could do something new.
You need me to take more time on that? Okay.
Yeah, I could do
Go ahead. I kind of want to do something new anyways because I have no self-control to wait.
For you, Erin, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I'm cool with it.
we had a really good question from Weird Girl. How do you avoid making the best friend / person close to the main character that quirky, stereotypical best friend?
Good question. Her own motivation. I already said it before, but and it's like deeper than finding the best dress for prom. Her motivation, that is.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Zootopia?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
No.
I think it's amazing.
Okay.
Everyone can watch it.
Okay,
I
it's
mean,
on
it's-
Netflix,
You could spoil it. I don't care. I'm just gonna be like the one random.
Okay,
that
I
hasn't
won't
watched
spoil
It's
it.
fine.
but
They
a
all
great
die.
study
What?
in
I'll die at the end. It's like Shakespeare.
a great study in Quirky best friend who's more than they seem can be found in Zootopia. So
Oh,
watch it.
Okay.
that is surprising. I gotta
Wait,
say.
who
It is an amazing movie.
I have
who are you
heard.
talking about? Are you
The
talking?
the
You
assistant.
can say it. I don't care.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Zootopia is just
I
a
love
really
it.
good example for very, very well-rounded characters, well-rounded
Yeah.
characters, amazing characters. Just go watch it.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
you want to write, watch it. If you want to,
I've watched it like twice in the last month.
Is it on
It's so
Netflix?
good.
I feel
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
just got put on Netflix last month.
It's on my list now.
Watch it. Love it.
Excellent.
Learn it. Live it.
Yes. And Judy and Nick.
Become Zootopia. Assimilate it into your everyday life. Find ways
Yes.
to quote it. It's so good.
Everybody in the comments is like freaking out, like Zootopia is so good. Okay, you guys.
Yes, it is. Thank you, everyone.
It is
I
very
have to watch
good.
it tonight with dinner now. All right.
Yes.
You've convinced me, all of you, totally.
And then we had another question. Any tips for naming a fantasy world? I'm going to expand this to naming things in general. Like, how do you pick names?
For fantasy things, or for me right now specifically sci-fi things, I had to like name a race the other day. I just mush letters together until it sounds like a thing.
Something that I do a lot is I like, especially for fantasy, if it's like a kingdom or something, I take random words and I spell them backwards.
Oh, that's cool.
Good idea.
Okay.
The Pokemon
do.
approach. That's what I like to call it.
Yes.
Okay. Pokemon.
I wrote a story
Oh,
where
yeah.
like the kingdom was like Iara said, which is Desiree backwards.
That actually sounds so cool, though. Okay.
That's a cool name.
That is so awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Nice.
I think everyone's gonna get it if I name my kingdom. What would it be? Nair.
Nair.
Everyone's gonna be like, well, that's not Aaron backwards or anything.
For anyone who's not in this conversation right now, they're like, all right, sure, whatever.
Yeah, all right.
See, mine's not pretty backwards.
It's
Yeah,
like
mine either.
it's like the mirror of Erised is desire backwards.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yes.
Same
Okay,
thing,
that's
you know,
cool.
channeling our inner J.K. Rowling.
Hey.
Spell things
Yeah.
backwards.
I usually will for this is only working in specific topics in fantasy and different languages. But the book I'm working on right now is based on like Middle Eastern, Babylonian, Egyptian mythology type stuff. And so I went through a lot of languages. So I went through Arabic and Hindi and Turkish and I can't remember what other languages I did. And I looked up words that associate with certain things in all the languages. So I think I looked up elements and I looked up different words for different deities. And then I based a lot of words off of that. So I think one of the things, I have these little like floating fireballs that just kind of like wander around and that's a source of light. So I think I called them arrows, which is actually I just realized that that's Greek for love. Or like something close to that. I can't quite remember. But that's based off of the word for fire and I believe it's Turkish.
So Rachel took the research approach, where the rest of
I
us
did.
took the make stuff up
Just-
approach.
Push together words.
Yeah, well, the other problem with naming things based off words in other languages is that you have to Google them to make sure that they don't mean anything bad in other languages.
That's true.
Mhm.
That is true.
Yeah. I tend to err on the side of how Rachel does it as well. For places, actually, too, I really like to look up old maps. Like, there's almost always some country that my fantasy world is at least very loosely based in. So, like, this week in preparation for my Nano novel, I was looking at maps of France from the 1700s and like stealing names of places that don't exist anymore
Oh, that's cool.
for that.
That's cool.
Oh, the other
It's
day
fun.
I found this is actually a place. I don't know where it is. If anyone is around like the Vancouver area, apparently it's in Langley, and I found it because it's where one of the buses that I take goes to, and it's a place called Carvolth or Carvoth, and I'm like, that is the coolest name ever, and it's on the bus stop station, and I'm like, yo, that is awesome. I need to make a country or a kingdom named Carvolth now. And people are gonna be like, so this whole fantasy novel is like based in Langley, or like how does that work? No, I swear, it's really cool.
Carvoth, that sounds
Yeah.
like, I don't know, a country of like, I'm picturing snow and like people dressed in fur with wolves. Am I totally off?
No, that's actually pretty similar about what I was saying. It's like an ice kingdom of like Carvolth.
Yeah,
or,
it
like,
sounds like an ice kingdom with like
rockers.
Because it
warriors.
sounds like
mountains
off,
or-
though.
No, I'm picturing like barbarian warriors, like Vikings but in the snow.
Almost, yeah. I was imagining some kind of like snowy mountains and like lots of rock and yeah,
Yeah. But
like mountain fortress.
get out of my
Great
brain.
minds think alike.
I don't know. One or the
Or
other.
maybe it's like a secret realm and you both can already picture it because you both live in Vancouver. So you frequent
That's what
in your
it is!
dreams.
Don't tell people about our secret realm, Rachel. Jeez.
Get out of my head, Erin.
All right. Let's do one last question. Natalie asked, do you guys use Scrivener the entire time that you're writing? I'm querying right now, and when you copy and paste from Scrivener, it messes up all the formatting. So I'm a little burnt out trying to reformat each time.
Don't talk to me about Scrivener and messing up format. No.
The worst.
Apparently, you can learn to format in Scrivener very, very well. I don't. But
I don't use
Yeah.
Scrivener.
I
I
actually do use
draft.
Scrivener. Yes, I'm the same way. I think it's crazy. Like it's a completely insane person move, but I draft in Scrivener, then I copy and paste over everything to Word, and then I'll print it out and edit again, and then sometimes put it all back in Scrivener, and then all back in Word.
I do
Wow.
something like that as well.
I don't do that, but I do something similar. Like
Right?
I'll-
Okay,
I-
all writers are insane.
yeah, I draft and plot in Scrivener, but I like after I'm done with the first draft, that's the last time that draft will see Scrivener ever. I just move to Word because
Editing
it's
better in Word.
Word is better.
Yeah, I just don't understand why Word. Okay, the only reason I put it in Scrivener is because you can actually literally move scenes around, like click
Yeah.
and drag them, and there's nothing else that does that, right? And you can label each scene and just keep track of it that way and click on them, you know, and not have to scroll and scroll and scroll. So
I have
Word
started
is
setting
bad.
up my Word document so that my chapters are headings. And then when you make the name of the chapter a heading, you can go to the view section and check that you want to view the navigation panel, and it'll show you like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. You can't move it around like in Scrivener, but you can jump from chapter to chapter, which was my fun trick of the month that I learned.
I'll actually sometimes do word search too. So if I know if they mention something specific in chapter 18, I can type it in Word and it'll jump straight to it rather than me scrolling down 500 pages.
Yes, because Erin doesn't
Yeah.
put chapters in until the book is like pretty much done.
Oh yeah,
What
true.
an accident!
I almost
I
forgot.
really sent it to Kelly without chapter.
It's so hard to read without chapters. Where do I stop?
I'm pretty sure I also don't
You
have
never
chapters.
That's why I did put chapters, so you'd never be able to stop reading. That's why.
Yeah, I like to draft in Scrivener, and then I start my second draft in Scrivener. But once it gets down to the line editing phase, I move it to Word, and I don't take it back because I know that I will screw up the formatting, and I'll send it to an agent, and they'll just think I'm not good at writing or something. Because the whole thing is in italics or something.
Like I do a lot with like
Yep.
tracking changes and comments, and there's always going to be a place for Word in my heart.
Yeah. All right. We've been going for over an hour, so we should probably call it. So thank you so much. Does anyone have anything they wanted to add about character creation? Final thoughts?
There was one question in the comments that I really wanted to quickly address of like, if you could have written one character, who would you pick? And I'm going to go with Harry Potter.
Aw, come on.
I'm going to go with any of the Raven Boys characters. If I could have just like Ronan.
That was the rest of our answers. I'm going to say Warren from Shatter Me is one of my favorite characters. But I don't like Juliet, so I don't want to necessarily have written the series. But
Yeah, I want to
that.
have written Harry Potter.
Yeah, who doesn't? Yeah,
I feel like that would have done good things for my life.
Oh, yeah,
or the
you know.
Hunger Games. Although, yeah, I like Katniss.
I would have liked to write a lot of the characters from, it's more of an indie series, but it's called Stolen Songbird by Danielle Jensen, and it's a...
I'm going to read it one day because you keep recommending it.
It's like it's so good! It's like a fantasy adventure novel with trolls under the mountain and curses and witches, and just, the character development is so good, and I'm very jealous that I was not able to make that.
I know character I would write. I had to look at second.
Is this Cass?
It's not Fangirl.
It's not from Fangirl.
Really?
I know. Like none of that box. No, Rysand from A Court of Thorns and Roses. Because I'm obsessed with him. I think he's one of the greatest characters ever written, and I love it.
He is the epitome of like the bad boy with the innocent heart, and
yes,
like so good.
I'm obsessed with him. I love him so much.
I completely agree. I have nothing wrong to say about that.
Finally, an answer that's not about Fangirl.
All right. Thank you so much for watching today, Word Nerds. Terribly sorry if we didn't have time to get to your question today, but every week in November we will be talking NaNoWriMo while simultaneously doing write-ins. So be sure to hold on to them. We can answer them then. If you liked this, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you next week when we are doing our book club. We are talking about Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and you guys, that book.
It's going to be great.
So good. Oh my god.
So good.
Excitement.
Yeah, you should, if you haven't read it yet, you need to read it. It looks big and intimidating, but it goes really quickly. There's lots of beautiful, beautiful pictures.
It took me 2 days. Like
yeah.
with
Same.
snack breaks.
I'll have snack breaks.
Yeah. It is so good. So we cannot wait to talk with you all about Illuminae next week. We'll see you tomorrow because we also do videos every day of the week. And I think that's it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.